here with Philip Grossman from DigitalGlue. He's going to show me creative.space, which is the thing that Streamline runs off of, I believe.
So it is on-premise managed storage. So we like to jokingly refer to it as fog, because it's like the cloud, but it's on the ground, it's in your facility. We're trying to give you the best of both worlds. So you get high performance edit capability in your facility with a 10 gig, 25 gig, 40 gig, whatever your connection needs to be, but the ease of use of a cloud application, a cloud infrastructure, where we monitor it proactively 24/7, 365. So we jokingly say, you actually get the storage for free, and you're getting an IT person at a quarter of the cost.
Well, the thing we mentioned over there too was just like the added security. I think a few conversations I've had about like the cloud is the hesitancy is like, well, like remember when AWS went down and the entire internet died? And so the same thing with like security. Like if my footage is in the cloud, what happens if I need it and it's not there? So having the physical drives with you is
Plus editing, if it's in the cloud, how do you edit in the cloud? You got a 1 gig connection that all 10 of your editors are, and then of course AWS or Azure will go, oh no, we'll put the edit in the cloud as well. At $800 a month per edit station, plus all your licenses. And if you've already invested in it, you want it local. And the nice thing is, like I said, because we call this fog, it comes with a fully integrated virtual private network built in.
Oh, nice.
So you can actually be anywhere in the world and mount your storage. We don't use Dropbox in our organization anymore because we actually have one of our creative.space servers in our data center. And all of us have that desktop app. We just mount our corporate creative.space, and I go into the marketing directory, and I'm not worried about it downloading the file and syncing. I'm just going to double click on the Word document, and it's going to open up.
That's awesome. So how are you managing this? This is a web-based product or also a
both. So we have a desktop app and a web UI. The desktop app you see here on the right is just an HTML5 JavaScript-based application, known as an Electron-based application.
Works on anything.
And this is the way most of the people interact with our system. So on the right here, you'll see we call them spaces, because creatives don't think in terms of volumes. They say, well, what space do you want me to store this in? So each of our units will show up that you have access to. So this one happens to be CS06 for the show. This is 05. And then these are all of the spaces I have access to. And the system knows, because we have a fully integrated LDAP, which we built from the ground up, outside of Active Directory. We think we're the only other fully developed access controlled system. So it's LDAP with extended access control list down to the file level. Light access directory protocol. It's user management. It's the equivalent of Active Directory. Active Directory is the same thing. In fact, one of our competitors like, why did you do that? That's so hard. We did it because we want our customers to have that added security within their organization all the way down to the file level and who can access what. So on the lightweight desktop app, this is the way most of the people interact with the system. They can see all the spaces that are going to connect to. These happen to be all mounted right now, but this is an unmounted one, so I can just click mount and it'll mount it on the desktop just like I plugged in a USB drive. And if I'm, I have a unit at my house, if I had my laptop here, I'd open this up, click it, and then mount just like I'm in the same building, because it's going over that protected VPN network. A couple other things that we can do that others don't. Now, you don't have to use this. We're not using any fancy drivers. It's all SMB3, but we do some interesting things that you can't do with the typical Windows Explorer or Finder and Mac. So as I mentioned, I can mount this at any level I want, or I can go down a couple levels, find the folder I want, and mount that.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't, and where that helps is, a lot of times people are like, well, if I organize it this way, my projects are going to be 16 folders deep. So I really don't want to organize it that way, so I'm going to organize it this way so it's not as well organized, but I don't have to go as far in the folder structure.
It's the thing we all do when you're like, I only need this file for a second, you check it on the desktop, and then it lives there.
Forever. And then you have that folder in your desktop called desktop cleanup.
Dude, I've got 3 deep DSK. I just DSK.
Exactly.
Thank God it's not just me.
And so you can mount that, or I can bookmark it and it'll show up as a bookmark. So every time the app shows up, I don't have to go down all the files to get to it. Or I can even click this auto mount toggle, in which case every time I open the desktop app, it's going to automatically mount that directory at that level for me. So we make it very, very easy for the user to access the space. So again, this is the way most of the people will interact with the system. Like I said, you can have multiple spaces, or excuse me, multiple nodes. So we have organizations that'll have their primary edit, and then they'll have a nearline system. And this will show you both those systems simultaneously in only the spaces that you have access to.
Right.
So the other way people interact with our system is through our web UI. Now, I'm logged into the web UI. There's 4 user types in the web UI. There's a system admin who can see everything and do everything. There's a system monitor who can see everything but can't do anything.
Okay.
There's a team lead who can manage users and spaces, and then there's a team user who can just use spaces. So I'm logged in as a sysadmin, so I see everything. If I was logged in as just a team user, I would only see the Spaces tab.
Oh, nice. And nothing's grayed out. So
It's not grayed out. It won't even be there.
That's nice.
If you're a team lead, you'll also see the team space, because that's where you manage users. So I'm a system admin, so I'll start at the top level. Most other people's storage, they show you pages and pages of UI of how to manage the storage.
Right.
We manage the storage for you. We have one page that sort of just shows you what the storage is.
Right.
Everything else you see in our interface is about managing your content. So on this page, we show you how much total storage, how much is available. We did nice little things like when I click on this, it'll go from terabytes to tibibytes to percentage.
Oh, sure. Oh, nice.
And all of them adjust that way. So it makes it very easy. I can see all of my connected users, and it shows me how they're connected, what the IP is, what spaces they're connected on. It'll even show me what, in this case, Nick has 109 files open, so I know his files open. If I click on the desktop, it'll actually show me what machines are connected, the OS, as well as the version of the OS and the desktop version.
Whenever you see Tim on a PC, you're like, someone hacked Tim's computer.
Yep. And of course, this is NAB, so it wouldn't be NAB without using alpha versions of our software.
Yeah, of course.
So we do nightly builds to show everybody what we're able to do. So we have the network scheduled tasks, so things like snapshots and monitoring of storage.
Yeah.
You can set up scheduled tasks. We have our network interface. And what makes our system different than others, but like I said, it's an on-premise managed solution, which means it's OpEx. It's a monthly fee where you pay each year in advance. You get a 15% discount. We don't lock anybody into a contract. We have 1, 2, and 3-year contracts. Let's say you sign a 3-year contract. At the end of 2 years, you're like, this isn't for me. There's one spot in our contract we make you initial. It says 45 days before your renewal, you're allowed to get out of the contract.
Right.
And what we do is, let's say 2 years, you're like, I don't want this anymore. We rewrite the contract as a 2-year contract, and you just pay the delta between the 2 and 3 year contract.
Sure.
You don't owe the entire 3rd year.
That's nice.
More importantly, let's say you start with a 10 gig interface, and you're like, oh, we're going to change to 25. No problem. We'll send you the 25 gig interface. You swap it out, send the other one back, no charge.
Oh, wow. Okay, nice.
You want to start with a 10 gig? Start with the 10 gig. Start with the 25, same price as the 10 gig. We don't want to nickel and dime the customer. We want this to be an experience like in the cloud.
Right.
Unfortunately, the cloud actually nickels and dimes you if you have done anything on AWS.
Yeah.
So this is the web, the network interface. By default, there's going to be a 1 gig connection and a 10 gig connection, but if you want a 25, 40, 50, 100, we can add those in as necessary. And then we also have a fully integrated zero-tier virtual private network, 256-bit encrypted private network. And you can have multiple VPN networks. So we joke with our customers who do media or marketing. You're doing something for Coke and Pepsi, and they don't want to have those 2 networks touch. You can have 2 VPN networks.
Sure.
And more importantly, it's a nodal-based VPN. What that means is, most VPNs, they're like, oh, I get on the VPN, I get on the machine, and I get into the rest of the network.
Right.
Ours, you can't. Because the way our firewalls are set up in the VPN, you can only access this machine. You actually can't even access any other machines on that network.
Nice.
Only the storage, so high security, making it very easy. So,
security is such a, at my level especially, obviously I have access to people who work at a higher level, being a journalist, but I didn't realize how important it was until a couple of years ago when I was meeting with studio people.
Oh yeah.
And it's half of the conversations are just how do we keep people from getting this?
So, that's a great
Especially
point. So one of the things, our system, here's our 0 tier. We have studios, so we have access to the system only to the OS, not to their content. But we have some customers that are really sensitive about anybody touching the system, so they can actually come in here and turn it off.
So you can't manage anything.
Correct. Now, we're always getting the phone home information, and we'll talk about the monitoring. So if something happens, we're always being notified, but we can't fix anything automatically. We have to contact them, and then they let us in. So we have that additional level of security for organizations that need that as well.
Right.
Okay. So once you get a system, first thing you need to do is add people. Again, if you've ever worked in Active Directory, it's not an easy thing. We made this simple. Literally, you click the button, do create user, username, password, choose one of the user roles I mentioned, first name, last name, phone number, and email address, click add, they're in the system. Easy as that. You want to add a group, same thing, you just click the button, do group, give it a group name, group's created. Simple. You want to add somebody to a group, you pick the group, you come here and do add user, and you'll see when I add Nick Anderson to the list, when I go and add user, Nick's no longer on the list. Because it makes it easy. If you have hundreds of people on the list, like, did I add that person? Didn't I add that person? And of course, you can go in there and filter through and type through and filter things down. So it makes it very easy. From this view, I can see all the members of the group. I can actually see how they're connected, just like in the connection string. I can come in here and go, oh, I don't want Nick to be part of that group, so I click that, and it will remove Nick from that group. We know that a lot of organizations work with contract workers and temp workers and things like that. Instead of having to add them and then remove them, and then add them back in when they come back in and remove them, we have a concept called deactivate. So you can deactivate now, go ahead and click that. All their information stays in the system, they just have no access. They're ready to come back, you hit reactivate. We can also do it on a schedule. So if they have a 30-day contract, 90-day contract, 120, or set a custom date of when you want it to automatically deactivate the user. So again, that extra level of security. So once you got users added, the next thing you need to do is, how do I get them access to the system? That's always the hardest thing for non-technical people. What's the IP number? What's the gateway? All this. We simplified that. Come down to the network port, click the little envelope, choose the users you want to add, or choose the group, hit send invitation. It will email all of them a 4 kilobit file. When they double click on that file, the desktop app will open. We'll pre-populate all of the network information, provide a username and password field. They get it correct, they have access to the system. They don't get it correct, they don't have access to the system. Now, same thing, VPNs are even more complicated to figure out how to connect to them. We simplified that as well, but we added an additional layer of security. You'll see when I click the envelope, it looks the same. When I click on the individual, you'll see this concept of the node ID. Every time our software is installed on a machine and user combination, a node ID is generated. So I come to the desktop app, I click on the little gear, here's my node ID. Again, it is user and machine combination. So my wife has access to my laptop. She has her own account on there. She logs into her account. She double clicks on my creative.space app, because all the apps are centralized. She won't have access to the network because, again, the node ID will be different. So again, an added level of security. This also is a quasi two-factor authentication. Because I have to have it. And you can have multiple external nodes. So I have my laptop, I have it on my wife's laptop, I have it on my desktop. And the reason we did that is, let's say my wife loses her laptop. I don't have to turn off all of my remote access. I can just turn off the device's access. Also, I liken this to the war movies with the nuclear missile silo. You got to put the two keys in and turn. So the user can't add themselves, and the admin can't add somebody. The two have to agree. They have to send the node ID. The person has to put their node ID to add to the system. So it adds that additional level of security. And again, it will send them the 4 kilobit file, and they'll connect. And the thing about our desktop app is that it knows what network you're connected to. So if you have multiple networks, the VPN, we're not connected to the VPN now, so it's not listed there, but the VPN will be listed. If you have a 1 gig network and a 10 gig network, it knows all the networks. And when you open up the application, it actually pings the networks. It knows which one's the fastest and will always connect you to the fastest network. So you don't have to say, I got to outside the network, I got to fire up the VPN. No, you just open up the desktop app and it knows you're on the VPN and connects you through the VPN. So it makes it very simple.
Amazing.
So the next thing you got to do is set up spaces. So very easy to set up a space. Click the button, add a space, give it a name, creates a space. Now I'm not going to add the space, but I'll show you what the screen looks like because we have so many spaces on here. it will allow you to add as many users and groups as you want.
Oh yeah, he was showing me this over
Yep.
the
Yep.
I almost said Streamline.
It's Streamline. Yep. And you can say who has what rights. I can add individual users. So I can say this tag user, I know he's in testing, but I added him with read-only. Most restricted permissions wins.
Right.
So even though he has read-write as this, because I've added, I always joke and say there's always that one person in your organization that breaks everything.
Right.
When I worked at the Weather Channel, his name was Bob Barker. So you can say Bob only has read-only because he's going to delete something. So I don't want him to be able to delete anything.
Right.
So it gives you all that capability. Now, from a group's permission, if he's in both PC film and DG testing, and I set this to read-only, he's actually going to have read and write because from a group's level, it doesn't make a difference because you're at a group level.
Right.
But you can add that specific user on the lower level. A couple of things that we have within our UI is we support about 220-ish file formats natively.
Right.
So we provide all the media info for the file. We provide all the EXIF information for the file. If it is a raw version of a file, so red, B-raw, ARRI, we'll actually provide the metadata for that raw format.
Right.
You can scroll through and pick your poster frame. I can download.
Oh, like the thumbnail for the. Sure.
Yep. I don't call it a thumbnail because it's actually the full. If it's a 1080p, it's a 1080p.
Yeah.
1920 by whatever. You can download it, so you don't have to worry about that.
Thumbnail.
Yep.
You got to call someone.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, the developers don't.
It's alpha. It's alpha.
Yeah, exactly. You can download the file directly from the web UI. We actually built our own binary file transfer system, going around the 2 gig limit that's found with inside of the most browsers. I think Chrome's like 2.1.
Right.
So what that means is it doesn't have to segment the file, and so it's much faster. I've actually tested it against Signiant, because I'm a manager with SMPTE. Had to get some files. They sent me the Signiant plugin. I'm like, God, I thought it was supposed to be fast. So I took the same file, put it on a corporate creative.space node, and then downloaded it through the web UI. It was about 3 times faster.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's a very fast system. We also support zip files, so you can actually see the zip file in the system and all the files associated with it. I can unzip the files. I can actually select multiple files and zip them in the web UI. If the file is supported by the browser, it will play in the browser. If it's not supported by the browser, we have the ability we call launch on desktop. So this is a red file, so if this had the red player on, I click that button, it would launch the red player and stream that to the desktop and play, no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah.
So if I'm at home or if I'm out in the world and I want to get to my machine at home, I could theoretically stream a red file across the internet.
Right.
As long as I have enough bandwidth.
Yeah.
We have tested this. We can do we also do what's called play to desktop on the file. It's on the side there. That is, because this one won't play to desktop. I can get one that will play desktop. Play to desktop, or stream the file to desktop, which will launch VLC and stream it to VLC. Right. So any file that's supported by VLC, you can do it that way. We have tested across a 1 gig public internet connection between 2 locations, a UHD ProRes 444 file.
Nice.
And we've been able to play, scrub back and forth, have no problems whatsoever. You go to HQ, it'll start to stutter a little bit. It's a network, but we're not transcoding on the fly. It's actually sending the ProRes file and streaming it. And because of that, you can actually be anywhere in the world, mount your storage, and edit. So we've actually demoed 4 ProRes HD 442 files on a Premiere timeline remotely in another location, and I was able to mount those files on my machine and use Premiere and scrub back and forth with all 4 files because it fit in that 1 gig bandwidth. Not using any kind of file acceleration, no lucid link. It's just, and that's full res files. Imagine doing a proxy, you can do thousands of files. So, and the nice thing about it, because you do it as a proxy based, you're mounting the same file path. You don't have to relink things when you're done. Right. Or if you're sending it up to Dropbox and then bringing it back down, then you got to relink all your files and send them back up and send them back down. We always say, well, you immediately double your network speeds because I'm not doing this up and down.
Yeah.
The system also has the ability to do ingest USB ports.
Yeah.
So you can do file for cards, anything that's USB. We can connect to any SMB. So if you have another network file storage system, you can connect it to this and copy from one to the other. So if you have a Synology and you want to move it to the creative space, you'll see everything that's on there when you click on it. We're able to do regular FTP. We've even integrated HyperDeck specifically. When you add a HyperDeck,
those are over there, right?
Yep. We know it's a HyperDeck because they have a unique way of file pathing. So it's now in there. So you can actually click on the HyperDeck. It'll create this transfer section. I can click on the HyperDecks, hit next, choose where I want them to go, hit next. And it's going to create folders based on the file names on the HyperDeck, because you set the file names on the HyperDeck, so we can actually put them in the folders the right way and then copy them from the HyperDeck onto the machine.
Amazing. I've been told we have 3 minutes left on this card. So.
All right, so I'll give you real quick. The next, this is worth the price of admission. Templates. So to create a template is simple as create a file on your desktop. Anything you put within brackets becomes a variable. You can have as many variables in the name as you want. You can have as many folders inside of that folder, and folders inside of folders inside of folders. You can have content within inside those folders. So let's say you have a contract that you want as part of this template. You can have a variable name in that folder, or excuse me, in that file name. So the contract will be named whatever you want to call it. Once you've got it all added, you drop it into a folder on the machine. It'll recognize that template names, and then it will create this structure. And this is where our LDAP, value of the LDAP, really comes in. You have file permissioning at the template level. So I can restrict who can use the template as well as who can have access to any folder created by that template. And not only can you do it at the root level, but I can again do it at any of the folder levels or any of the subfolder levels or any of the file levels. So I can literally create an entire project folder that the entire team can get to, but when management goes to that folder, they're only going to see the file that says final deliverable because they don't care about anything else.
Or sometimes you don't want them to have it.
Exactly. And this gives you consistency across the entire assets library that you're building.
That's amazing. Well, it's very impressive.
Thank you.
So
and there's so much more that I could talk about.
Go online and figure it out.